In this previous exercise, we have tried to make use of the comparison of two pixel color in order to find out whether there is some sort of interactive activity in front of your webcam. And in the last version, we observed that we might need to manually type in the color information in the second set of the number boxes, which can be quite troublesome for some automatic tracking of color. So in this way, we try to improve this version in order to make use of some automatic facility for the registration of the color information. So the major part we will need to, for example, to maintain the color information is actually how we obtain this particular list of RGB and then send it over here, and then before we send it for the color change for the comparison. So what we are going to do is we try to put in another object right here before we put it into this 3 number box. In this case, first of all, we remove one set of them, and instead we connect this one to the second one, and we move away a little bit to make room for the new objects. The objects we are going to use is a new one. We call this spidgot. It's a very useful tool for us to, for example, to manipulate the flow of information. If we take a look of the help information, actually you can obtain the basic operation is pass or block messages, and whether it passes or blocks message, which is controlled by the second inlet, which we name as a control. So it's used to have one single input, whether it is 0 or 1. And for 1, you pass the information, and for 0, you block the information. So in this case, we'll make use of a toggle to send in actually the 1 or 0 right here. And then we send it out to the information for the unpack. And before we start with the complete patch, we can observe a little bit the operation right here. And in that case, I try also to disable the color change in the rectangle first. We'll keep the original color and then try to make the comparison afterward. So I push the slider into somewhere in the middle of the screen, and then we turn on the metal box. And in this case, you can observe that there's no changes in the 3 number boxes over here, the red, green, and blue, even though I wave different color in front of the camera in the center part of the screen. And then I can experiment, for example, by clicking in the toggle box at the second inlet of the spidgot. So you can observe that if I put in, for example, a blue object in front of the camera, you can notice, for example, the number boxes will have smaller value in the red and green, but higher value for the blue box. So I put in something like the brown. You have more red and green instead of the blue one. So this is the operation of the spidgot. If I turn it off again, you can see that the change stopped immediately. So there's no change in the number boxes. And at the same time, you can observe that the last change in the color will be maintained in the 3 number boxes. So what we are going to do is by using this toggle to turn on the registration of the color information. Once you are satisfied with the color in front of the camera for tracking, you can turn it off, and then the number will be maintained right here. And then you can proceed with the live data and put it to the first inlet of the color change patch. So the remaining part is you send in the color information to the first inlet of the color change, such that it will compare with those you store in the 3 number boxes over here, and it can achieve the automatically. For example, in the right hand side of this one, we do the registration of the color, and for the left hand side of the color information, which is the live color information, you send to the first inlet of the color change. And then we can take a look of the operation. So first of all, we turn on the metro box to send in the live color information to the color change. And then the second operation is we turn on the toggle over here to do the registration of the color. For example, if I do not put anything in front of the camera, it will register the background color, the color of the window shade at this point. So once you have a stable color of the window shade, you turn it off. And then you can immediately observe the change in the toggle over here. And then, for example, if I put in a number right here, and if there are no changes in front of the background window shade, and if the color change is within the size of this particular number 1, so you won't have any change in over here. And once, for example, you will put in your other information like your hand or your color right here, you may observe, for example, the change in the number box over there. I can do the register again. I can put in a small number like so this is the basic operation. So at some point of time, if you would like to have more sensitive or precise measurement, you can, for example, adjust the number in the third inlet. If you have a smaller number, you can have more precise measurement. For example, if the change in color is kind of slight in your situation, you can have a smaller number in order to effect the change. If you had a very drastic change in the color like this one, you can of course put in a bigger number in this number box for tracking. We can further improve the operation of this particular patch, for example, by automatically changing, for example, the position of the point you would like to track. At this point, we only change, for example, this particular slider, and we guess that this position is roughly the center of the screen. And actually, you can make use of this rectangle, and we change the position of this rectangle by putting the translate information, such that you can have a visual response of the point you would like to track. For example, if you do not want to use the color information, and you put in, for example, the translate, and you can use, for example, a smaller one instead of a big square. So what we are going to do is we try to relate the slider information right here, which actually the position of the pixel point you would like to track the color, and the physical position of this particular rectangle for you to monitor, for example, the color pixel you would like to track. So what we are going to do is we send out the X and Y information right here. And if you remember, these two particular sliders come with a range from 0 to 1. And in order to display the rectangle on the full screen of 800 by 600, we might need to perform some calculation for the X and the Y coordinate by doing some sort of multiplication and subtraction. So the screen width is 10.66 in the X direction, and the screen height for the Y direction is 8. In order to cater for the negative and the positive direction, we will do a subtraction for half the screen size. And then we'll receive the X and Y information right here. So this is the X, and the second set will be the Y. And also we can turn off the fill color by just using the draw line for the rectangle, such that you will not block the color information in the center of that particular rectangle. So this change mainly for the usability of the particular patch. And again, you can replace this number by our horizontal slider. with the range, for example, like from 0 to 1 or 0 to 2, depending on your intention, whether you would like to have more precise or not so precise tracking. Then we can have a look at the overall operation. So we turn on the draw line first. And you can do some operation in changing the slider. For example, you would like to track the color information in front of this cartoon box with this brownish color, and you can turn on the metro and then do the color registration of this single piece of pixel in front of the background of the cartoon box. That is more or less the information you would like to track. We can adjust a little bit of the slider. So once you are settled with this number, we can turn off this toggle for the spidgot. And in this case, the information will be maintained in the 3 number boxes and altogether in the second inlet. And at the same time, it's doing the comparison between the live information right here and also the store information right here. And what you can do for the testing is you can put some of the other colors in front of the cartoon box over here and perform some adjustment in the slider. So in that case, for example, if your palm color is pretty much close to the cartoon box color, you can have a lower value for the threshold. And if you would like to track color which is kind of significantly different from the background, you can put in a higher value for the slider. And of course, you can put in more points for tracking. All you need to do is to replicate this sequence of information. For example, if you would like to have multiple points for your tracking, and each one of them will produce another toggle you would like to, for example, effect some of the changes. So this is the basic operation we would, for example, introduce by the use of very simple color tracking by using this spidgot command and also the color change patch I have written beforehand. And in the next exercise, we'll try to, for example, make use of this particular toggle to create some sort of changes on top of your full screen video in order to create some interactive experience for your user.